right. Thank you and everyone for joining the Internet Value Foundation New York, episode 124. And for all of those who get to listen to this information in the future, I hope you guys find it as valuable as I know I do every single day. The diverse amount of mindsets and perspectives and different information we get to listen to from all of the individuals that come and speak in here. So I appreciate that. Vet and Shellfish, thank you guys for showing up so quickly. It took me a couple minutes to get the recording up there and set, but I'm going to grab some information to post up top. I'm keeping this more of a open forum conversation. Wait till we get some more people in here, possibly to start talking about stuff. And feel free to come up if you guys either would like to, or post anything in the bubble at the bottom right for anybody who would like to share their thoughts or opinions as well. Sorry about that. Give me one more moment. Just going to grab a couple more things to post up top. But starting off with the first thing that I did post up top, I'll talk about it because it was in reference to our last space that we spoke about when we were talking about, platonic solids and the significance behind the geometric representation of these electromagnetic frequencies in mass formation that through entropy have created the formation of something like our DNA. And so we were speaking about DNA in our last space, and some of the interesting things about it, but this was one thing that we didn't speak about. That was just a cool little topic post that just happened to be posted around the time that we were speaking about the space. But yeah, so DNA, one strand of your DNA could stretch from the sun to Pluto 17 times, and so it's just interesting thought, right? Because I had mentioned, right, a strand of DNA in our body, right, that depending on the expressions of this DNA, because all of us have the same DNA makeup, but depending on the way that the DNA is expressed is actually how the organism is then assimilated. And so there's I thought that was really cool that a strand of DNA is compressed to that significance. If you think about from entropy standpoint, the amount of energy that it actually takes. And this is why when you think about mass, we as our species, we actually have a tremendous amount of mass to each one of us because of the cells in our bodies, because of something like our DNA, that it has just the amount of energy it takes to possibly bind such a significant from one standpoint, the possibility of being so volumized, or such a significant volume, to then being existing in multiple inside of ourselves. I thought that was pretty cool. But I lost track of a couple other things I wanted to go get and post. Oh, Fridge, welcome up, man.
What's up? Mic check. Hello, hello.
Roger.
What was I going to say? I am working at these drone labs at the moment, and I just thought it was awesome. As soon as I saw the post up top, it said semiconductor labs, lasers, and they have these massive setups and the curtains covering everything. It's like pulling teeth trying to find out what they're doing, but it's neat looking, all the lasers and whatnot. So being around that, and then all of a sudden you're posting up about lasers. That's all I wanted to say. I have no knowledge about what they're doing, or but well, I know what I'm doing. We're putting the power for the new their new laser setups, and we're working alongside the HVAC company that's installing the cooling system for some of the lasers. So it's I'm not sure what they're doing with them though, but yeah, that's all.
No, it's really cool. It's interesting. So, you said you don't know what they're doing with the lasers.
Yeah, they're sort of secretive about it. The first lab we were working in, it was about laser guided, uh, not laser guided drones, but I guess some sort of laser guided technology for the drones, and we had to demo out the warehouse side so they could have a whole separate area for like a testing zone for the drones. But this other area, I have no idea what they're doing with the lasers.
Interesting.
It's not like some sort of military thing. It's just a college lab.
Well, it's actually, a lot of studies are done in colleges for sure and universities. But I should say a lot of technological breakthroughs. But going towards semiconductors, and thoughts of lasers and really nanoparticles and this ability to have um, this nanophotonics, right, which is the transmission of the array of light energy being able to be studied and understood in a very minuscule scale, this nanoscale, and so lasers being definitely one of the tools, something, and a more recent tool that was established, right? If you think of lasers, really less than 100 years old, well, no, 1920s, yeah, right. Lasers were starting to getting to be used in scientific experiments, and so today the understanding of the array of light, lasers, these charged particles that we can create from energy, electricity, yeah, yeah, it's super interesting, and lasers have so many different use cases from the one ability from blasting um, satellites in outer space to move a significant amount of distance, or a ship or something like that with some sort of solar sails, to the transmission of energy or the transmission of communications, studying quantum communications, and the ability that lasers may have to be able to transfer communication from one post to the next, which then could be attached to something like a fiber optic network. It could create a much faster communications from long distances. It could be interesting. But yeah, lasers, man, lasers and nano, and really, right, nanoparticles and the nano robots as well, being part of that, right? If you think about nano chips, you have these very microscopic um, pieces of material that are being assimilated together, and so the tool set that it takes to be able to make that stuff takes very very precise and precision um, technologies on that nanoscale. Takes a nano to know a nano. What's up, Dazzling?
Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone is well today. Okay, so I'm half a copy through, and we're talking lasers and nanotechnology. So my mind is starting to shift towards um, kind of, what was it, Space Force, they put together, and the fact that, we're probably going to have some sort of warfare in space one day, especially if we're going to be living out there. There's going to be some sort of confrontations of some sort. I wouldn't understand or even begin to understand where the physics would lie with shooting, just say a general gun in space. I don't know how the bullet's going to behave or react. So is this when kind of like uh, like honestly thinking, how would like what would be the best form of weaponry within space? Would lasers be the ones to be using to kind of shoot and stuff like that?
Yeah,
Force fields would be first.
force field. Yeah, force field as well. But yeah, lasers for sure. The lasers is the only thing that really can be used, and so there's a reason that even going to sci-fi, where you don't see large machine or physical material shots being shot in outer space, is the reason for it is because it's going to lose a tremendous amount of momentum. Because typically, you think about outer space as large distances of distance between, say, vehicles or ships or any sort of um, anything you'd want to shoot, right? That would be parallel to yourself. And so not only is the trajectory going to be slow, but we think of outer space as a vacuum. Yes, it is a vacuum, and in some cases more so than others. But there are still particles of space, right? EMs, if you would like to call them, as they're kind of typically labeled. But these electromagnetic, right, particles that make up outer space themselves, of these little particulates, hydrogen and oxygen, whatever they may be, uh, in there. And so from that distance, a shell would definitely begin to decrease over speed over time, and yeah, and then of course you have like a force field, which is not going to do anything against. But a laser, right? A charged a particulate beam can actually increase in time in speed, and that's why also when you think about quantum communication going through something like lasers, a vast array of distance span, yeah, it makes much more logical sense to use lasers, because you could essentially charge the particles in front of the said particles that were being charged, and so in mass you keep this movement of charged particulate increasing over time because of this flywheel effect of energy momentum you're able to create from the beam. And so, that interesting thought about lasers.
So So are you saying that when you shoot a laser in space, the velocity of it begins at X speed, but as it travels further through space and time, it exponentially increases. Is that correct?
The correct propulsion of a laser, yeah, yeah, correct, yeah, yeah.
Does it reach what's its critical mass? Like what is it the speed of light or
Well, that would be the fastest speed that we know, but we can only create a propulsion that's somewhat of one third the speed of light today, because it depends on the amount of energy that is put into the beam. But yeah, essentially, the uh, the beam could create and this is also within a withheld system, right? And so you would shoot um, a beam at a ship, right? And the ship, using its own methodologies that it has, would take that beam of energy and use that as a flywheel effect, right? To essentially create a loophole of charge that could increase over a span of time. Yeah, through ionized propulsion is if you would like to look it up.
man, that is so
If it,
cool.
if it
Well,
was
I
in
mean,
if it
it's
was
cool
in
stuff.
warfare, obviously, as soon as the laser hit a physical structure, that's when it would lose its potential. This also goes to the Death Star, right? So think about the Death Star, right? They have this extremely powerful, energetic device sitting somewhere in outer space, and so it creates this beam of propulsion that picks up over time. And as soon as it hits its, of course, destination being planet go boom, right? And so obviously, the beam hits target eventually and dissipates of energy because it physically hits something. But this is also something we look towards in outer space for signals, right? Because the beam also itself would trajectory wise would dissipate over distance. So volume wise, it would dissipate over distance, and so the farther it goes, the wider the distance of the array of the laser or communication, if say it was inscribed in a laser, it would be. And so this is also something we try and look for in satellites, is trying to pick up different lasers possibly that could be carrying some sort of radio signal from an alien civilization.
Okay, so if the
So well, hold on before.
go.
I shouldn't say alien, sorry, other intelligent civilization. They could be alien.
So is this laser infinitely continuing on without being connected to the source? Like it is just infinitely projecting itself in its original direction?
Well, it wouldn't necessarily need to be connected to its source. No, yeah, yeah, yeah. But you would
So how does it
essentially.
continually propel itself forward
So you would catch
if the
you would
source
catch the laser and keep it in a perpetual flywheel effect. It's called ionized propulsion if you want to look into it.
that's in a closed circuit?
Closed loop circuit, yeah. Well, we could call it a closed loop circuit, but it could be on the exterior of the ship. Yeah.
So you're saying like the laser would be caught in a like a circular path.
Well, it would
Like how
it
would
would
it
it
loop
would be it would be
in
caught
an
in it would
infinite
it would be
one
caught in a
direction?
magnetized path, and through this magnetized path you could create an acceleration of propulsion. And like I said, there's particles in outer space, and so through this ionized propulsion you basically would be able to suck in the hydrogen from outer space or whatever chemical you wanted to use to basically keep the fuel for this going theoretically forever.
Okay, so this is so cool. Okay, so you said before that when the laser would hit something solid, it would dissipate, right? So how would they create a laser that could, like, what would you need to do to create one that would, say, penetrate through, a ship or something, or some sort of field? What would you have to do to it?
It's just energy output, right? So how much is your shield, right? How many megawatts or maybe kilowatts or even terawatts is going into the shield, the magnetized field that you're able to put into the shield. And so maybe you have these multitude of these we'll call them nuclear reactors for what we think of as being able to have this high energy output from a reaction today of multiple different particles, even if these particles be the same uh, makeup, and think about some sort of magnetized structure that we could almost like a large hadron collider that we could basically put in the interior of the ship that would be protected by the exterior of the ship. And then once you push the button to turn it on, it basically creates what we would call a force field around it, right? And so maybe you just need enough of a high enough energy output that once your laser hits that force field, it basically just blows those reactors just melt down, right? Like they can't handle that amount of energy output to sustain themselves. And you have all these capacitors and different things inside of the ship to basically try to absorb that. Because when you see the ships, they go to like something like Star Trek, right? When they get when a ship gets shot with a laser beam, I mean, how does it? It's either a deflecting it, which means the laser beam would bounce off of it, or it's absorbing it, right? It's one or the other. And so I think we see this in most categories. When a ship gets shot in outer space, it basically absorbs that shot. And so you need to have like capacitors and stuff in that ship to basically absorb that electrical pulse, so you don't fry the ship. This is fun. Go ahead, Fridge.
Oh yeah, since we're going the sci-fi route, like because I played Elite Dangerous for a long time, and they actually have separate sets of shielding and armor specific for energy weapons, lasers and whatnot. And so, and it goes into depth as to how it dissipates and how it, I think dissipates was the word, and how it just negates or mitigates the damage that the laser would do at the physical level. But if it's if you're just using a laser to attack the shield, it has more effectiveness against that because the disbursement of the laser is like it's feeding back into whatever the shield reactor is. So what you were saying, I was trying to make a point with this. Not sure where it was going, but it's just neat that you're talking about this. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I enjoyed the route it went as well, and I think it's something very relative too, because I as much as it sounds very futuristic today, I think we're much closer to things like this being a relative possibility, at least acknowledgement of it being able to be done, right? With everyday tool sets that we could have on a much smaller energy footprint. Dazzling there. Go ahead, jump in.
No, look, this is why I said it in the first place. I started off with Space Force because we look. The reality is, like, and I know it sounds very sci-fi, but the reality is that you've got a lot of people going into outer space, and it seems like that's going to kind of exponentially increase over our lifetime as well. And you will have people in there in space for a lot longer than they have been. And eventually, I've heard discussions about, someone committing the first crime in space, or even the first murder in space. And so we're going to get to a point where you're going to need some sort of, law enforcement or, people around to kind of, I guess, keep people safe and regulate things as well, so that, people aren't, like blowing up a spaceship, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it sounds, yeah, sci-fi, but we're definitely going to need to kind of, put these things together. I would have to say that they would already be working on something, on these kind of technologies, because they know it's coming. I mean, you don't go through, funding into, Space Force if you're not serious about it. So, yeah, it's definitely a really cool discussion to have for sure.
Shellfish, please jump in.
Yeah, so I had jumped into a space last night with Ashton Forbes. He was doing a live feed. I've ever heard of him? Maybe you have. He's kind of a investigator. I don't know if he's a physicist or not. He seems to be pretty knowledgeable, at least in the information that he's been researching. It had to do with that airliner a few years back that had just disappeared midair. And the stuff that he was discussing last night had to do with them looking at the footage with different filters on and seeing something of like some kind of drone looking stuff that was orbiting the airliner beforehand. And he said he found some documents that had to do with dark energy and opening up into the ethers for another dimension, which I just thought it was really fascinating because one of the games that I interact with actually has the same type of kind of etheric realm that you could jump into. So I thought that was interesting. Have you ever heard of any experiments like this? I know CERN is definitely trying to not necessarily open up the ethers, but colliding particles. What are your thoughts on actually opening up portals with stuff like this?
Was that a question for me?
For anyone, I mean, I don't know. Have you? I mean, I'm sure you've seen the pilots coming up in front of Congress talking about different orbs flying around anything in the air. Would you like me to put some of the documents? I think he has them on the page on his homepage. If you're not familiar with him or his
Sorry,
research.
sorry about him. Was that the guy that was going back and forth with Kim.com?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I did. I did see a little bit of that, and I believe, yeah, there was some footage that was leaked, and he was going on about it. These technologies that they basically have were responsible for one of these planes going missing. And I think Kim. Com. I don't know too much about him, but he was giving his opinion on the footage that had come out, and this journalist was basically saying that Kim.com didn't know too much about what was going on. I didn't get right into it, but I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, like I said before, we're talking about these technologies, that sound, like they live in the sci-fi realm, but they are an actual reality. So, it just goes to like make you think how, like, what have they actually created? Like, what can they do? And
Well, who's
I guess the mystery stands. What happened to the plane, type of thing. So yeah.
well, the first thing is who is they? You always answer who is they, and you always get the answer, right? Because if you know who they are, well, typically it's pretty easy to make interpretations about one person's actions based off of their previous history of actions. It's just how history typically, it doesn't necessarily repeat, but it sure does rhyme in some sort of patternized format. That being said, another question would be in this particular scenario, because they don't know, it just sounds strange to me. Why an airliner? If we were talking about something of this very high nature of technology, of course, a patternized format of energetic waves that could create a tear in dimensional space, essentially folding or collapsing the space in which this circular momentum, I guess it would be a circle, a very wide circle, or maybe it was the shape of the outer of the airplane itself, which, who knows, right? I guess you can make it any shape you want. uh, why would it have been formatted in that particular spot at that particular time for an airliner to go through it? And how much technology went into doing that, right? Like, so we, it would be like, who has that, and then why would they have done that? Or like,
I would imagine it would probably be whoever was on the flight log. That would be the first thing I would probably check.
well, I'm just saying, somebody who's making a comment like, oh, they made a portal for the airliner to disappear in it, who didn't do any research on either, hey, who they, maybe he's specifically talking about in that one, because I didn't mean you dazzling saying they. I figured it was the individual that you got the they from, right, that was saying they. And then he didn't even look into logs to see who was on the flight. He just thinks, yeah, it makes sense that some sort of high technology civilization that lives amongst us created a wormhole to suck in an airliner for no reason. He doesn't know why, but it's like, you didn't even look into it. It's kind of like, why would I?
Well, I mean, he does. I could. I mean, I was just curious. I mean, we were doing a thought experiment, so I was just kind of like going on that track. But I mean, he does. He did a lot of research. He's been going on and about it for a while, and just happened to come across it last night. Like I said, I can give you his stuff if you even want to look into it. It's not a like big thing. It was just, I don't know. We were talking about Death Stars and like pretend photonic missiles and Star Wars, so I didn't think that was kind of that far out of the realm.
Well, I wouldn't say that the thought of us being able to create wormholes is that far out of the realm, right? But once, same kind of thought of the lasers, right? This is something maybe in our lifespans, if we plan to live like, another 100 or years to 150 years or something like that. It's not on the short term foreseeable future kind of thing. And then that one was more of like, it was used in a certain manner rather than the technology itself. But I think the technology is cool, and different ways that could possibly be done. We could totally talk about. We have the thought of the Einstein Rosen's bridge, right, which is basically two wormholes that get attached, utilizing the thought of mass of black holes, and so. The theology in that one, though, is that the mass, the gravitational force inside of the black hole itself, though, is so massive that you wouldn't be able to escape the other end. And so once you enter, you're in this perpetual, cycle through the black holes that you'd never be able to loop out of. But if you were able to create, say, a trajectory, a force momentum in a particular velocity outside of from the interior to the exterior of the black hole, maybe you could escape. There's that thought. There's also the thought of how powerful the black hole would have to be. And then instead of a black hole, well, then that's really that big question of like, what is a black hole? Is a black hole uh, 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 a two-dimensional space existing in a three-dimensional universe, and so our third dimension, as we perceive it, is that two-dimensional space being broken down because of the significance of the energetic force and mass created and then gravity, right? In doing in itself, basically like an undoing of the doing. You could think of it as like matter undoing itself. I don't know. That's an interesting thought. Fridge, though, go ahead, man.
They, as a concept, is sort of a black hole because it can take all ideas and be everything and nothing at the same time. Um, like when you're asking for the like who they is, sometimes you have to open up to the skeptical and just be like just accept they, because sometimes there is no answer, Death.
Well, I think there's always an answer. I just don't think we're always aware of it.
Well, that's not fair.
Well, listen, if their answer was there is no answer, that's still an answer.
Well, how about the technology you always are telling us that everything is happening all at once, the past, present, and future. So if we are talking about future technology, it's already existing and already has existed. So the fact that we're talking about this is not that far fetched for them or they to have discovered or be utilizing at this moment in time.
Yeah, but I disagree with the reference of the approach of how it was used. It's like I don't think it's important to the discussion overall of the technologies itself. It's like it's almost like, right, like it's like, yo, we got this really great hammer here, and it's like, yeah, but somebody used it to kill somebody with it. It's like, how do you feel about it? And I'm like, well, I don't really. It's not my opinion. I shouldn't be making opinion on how somebody used the hammer, right? There was their actions, uh, regardless, right? They have reactions, they have consequences. But uh, what I want to know is all the great things that we could do with it, right? Let's not focus on the potential downsides, which we can, right? I mean, you can always
Hold
downsides of
on,
technology,
like
but
creating a black hole is not a fucking cool technology. Sorry, it's not a cool technology. That's like pretty amazing. Anti-gravity, endless dark matter sucked out of the ether is what like they were talking about.
Yeah, that's all terrifying. The
That
most efficient way to progress those sort of technologies is it, it's going to be through war. Like every one of those things you said, the necessity of those even existing is going to be to counter something on the other side. So they're going to advance through violence. This has actually been a very violent discussion, like a lot of
fridge,
death.
it's like it's like you're projecting like zombies would come out of it or something.
You develop shields because someone has lasers. You don't develop shields because lasers don't exist, right?
And it's a very interesting thought. I would say this though. So some of the technology we've spoken about for sure. Like when the thought of just traveling in outer space, right? You'd rather be prepared and safe than sorry. And it comes down to a simple equation, right? You can basically say if there's other intelligent species out there, there's really most likely three outcomes that kind of stand out that will be the most plausible based off of just how we know life exists, right? Because everything is either being eaten, being waiting to be eaten, right? Or is sorry, man, somebody said it the other day and I loved it. Yeah, is being eaten, waiting to be eaten, or is in the process of the middle, right? Essentially, I guess. Man, I forgot what Google Foo is the one that said it the other day. But yeah, there's really we have these three outcomes that we would get from other intelligent civilizations, right? Either they would be friendly to us, they would want to ignore us, right? Or they're going to want to go to war with us. And so when you go down the tree branch of possible situations that could be made from each three of them, the the most likely outcome is the possibility of war. And the reason for that is because if the second outcome is to come, one reaches out to another in the hopes of becoming cooperative and working together. The the response from the secondary party could be the instance of war, and that means you've given up your ticket of surprise. And so, um, you have to weigh that from an intelligent species perspective. If that would make sense for you wanting to interact with a species that has the potential to maybe make that decision as their next approach to some sort of communication output towards you. Okay, and so then it makes it more likely that a species would just not communicate with other intelligent species. Okay, so that means we'd never have communication with them anyway, and we would go separate ways and basically just ignore each other, right? Right, and so it leaves the third option being, okay, so if you're in our vicinity, if you're taking resources that we think we may need, it's most plausible for us to just destroy you, because if we take the chance of communicating with you, we risk our civilization reaching doom as well. And so, yeah, the thought of us being able to, travel in outer space and venture out as a species, I think it comes inherently with this, survival instinct that we still need to have some sort of defensive stances for sure. Now, when it comes to something like wormholes, though, I think this is a huge use case when it comes to something like traveling. I mean, if you're talking about cutting down the travel time from Mars or even the moon, say some sort of planetary station, say we're not able to create a energy output from a a entanglement perspective where we could say assimilate your particles through a wormhole, or whatever means of how we're doing the communication from distance A to distance B. I think the the thought of a private company basically producing that, and then patenting, and then of course like having that as like an airline, right? Instead of you thinking about it as JetBlue, it's Teleport Blue or something, right? And it's teleporting you to the moon or something like that. I think that makes a lot of sense, right? And so that can be commercially made, of course. And so your average person probably wouldn't really be able to get your hands on it. Of course, you can't buy an airplane. The average person can't buy an airplane, but it still exists. It's publicly available. And we got some hands up, so please go ahead, Shellfish and Dazzling.
Well, first of all, if it's up to that, we're going to have a 10 XRP wallet size still, and I most people won't be able to keep the wallet funded. Anyway, I'm joking, but so far, like, there are no aliens. We all are all by ourselves, and not having to worry about being murdered by aliens. But when I walk outside on this planet that's full of life that's around me, I still have to bring an umbrella. I have to plan for hurricanes or whatever. So the force fields and stuff like that would not necessarily be to protect against other lives trying to attack me in space, but in fact, space weather and debris and such. Like, is that not just a sufficient reason to create this technology to protect your ship from sinking by octagon? No, well, not a sinking octagon, baby. No.
Without knowing the technology that you're building your defense against, you're going to build your defense against your own weapons. So unless you know your enemy, you have no way of defending against
So
it.
So you're saying we have weapons made from dark ethers and anti-gravity already? Like you're basically saying that that's what we need to protect against?
But where'd dark ether come from?
The beginning of the conversation, I told you this gentleman was saying that there was zero gravity and it opened up to dark energy, and he said that it was basically like proving that dark energy existed, like Tesla said, which would in fact end up providing free energy for
Tesla
all,
said dark
meaning
energy exists?
I was trying to grasp the concept. Okay, the guy was drinking a few martinis while he was in his space.
I
I
think
will
he drank a
admit,
few martinis before he got into the space too. No offense.
possibly. Okay, admittedly, but hey, there's people in our space that drink all the time that disclose information. That's not necessarily something odd.
No, it
That's
wasn't.
definitely
It
something.
wasn't. It was.
I
It
mean,
was
it's
more or
like
less.
it used to be known as a truth serum, so it could in fact have been something that could be hitting on something factual. I
It
don't
was.
know this,
It
which
was.
is why I
It
was
was less of
asking.
a comment towards him being under the influence, and more of a comment towards him being under the own influence of himself. If that makes any sense. Um, yeah. So, but dark, or
I
dark
can
or dark
relate.
ether, right? Or dark energy. There is no answer for what it is because it's just a representation of a symbolic notion that we know that there is a force out there that we're not able to. Thank you for coming, Fridge. That we're not able to necessarily react with in any meaningful way or even observe. As it's like we look at the microwave background as we see from what we can see as the farthest reaches of existence of our universe so far, and it's like, well, what's behind that? That's really what we're kind of trying to symbolize with the wordology, dark energy, or dark matter, if you will. And I mean, you could say that um, if we do one day get to, it's like prove what it is, which is, theoretically, it's like interesting to think about, because how would we observe something in which emits no light? As far as everything we observe, everything you're seeing right now is energy, is photons bouncing off of these objects that are atoms that are compressed together, bound together, and atoms are just these energetic forces, these subpyramidal energetic forces through entropy that have been bound together over time. And so it's like, would you be able to view said thing that doesn't have any sort of representation of energy as you're observing it? And it's just like, I don't know, it's like weird questions. It's why I think it's better represented as like a symbolic notion of symmetries of existence that make up this kind of manifold in which we call this quantum mechanical system that makes the reality in itself. And it's not a thing, it's all things, you can almost say. And I think that's where we get lost, which, quantum itself could be also said is dark matter, dark energy, if you would like it itself, or metaphysics, or uh, there's just this underlying structure and layer in which the dimensional aspect of reality is bound together through entropy. They're all basically the same thing, in my opinion. It's just different ways to describe it. But yeah, nonetheless, I think great energetic forces smashing into each other will perpetually be able to create black holes. And if we understand the significance of the entanglement between these particulates of energetic sources, we could create, say, a tear in space in one location, tearing another space at another location, which is also kind of dramatic if you think about that. It's not necessarily just a tear in space in your location, it's a tear in space in another location that is still your location. I mean, how would the two locations be connected if they weren't the same location at that point in time? It's this kind of like warpy thing where if it ever gets done publicly, technically proves that all of reality is an assimilation of it in itself, because how could anything be entangled if it wasn't a representation of itself being somewhere else? I mean, that's what entanglement is. I'm blowing McQuack's mind. McQuack, tell us how you feel. You don't have to raise your hand. Go ahead. You can jump in.
No, I just needed time to. I was in an area where I couldn't talk. But, oh man, I lost my train of thought. I was going to say something, but then you were blowing my mind there with the. Give me a minute. Keep going. I'll remember.
Okay. Yeah, and so and the significance of these the understanding though of all of these symmetries of this
Oh, yeah,
metaphysical.
yeah. Okay, then why are we trying to replicate this at CERN? Aren't we going to cause it to collapse on Earth? We're going to kill ourselves.
Well, so we don't have enough energy to do so, and so it would be really cool if we did, because if we'd be able to create a black hole the same size of the Earth, or at least it could fit the Earth inside of it. And so, think about that: we could fit a whole Starship Galactic civilization through a wormhole that large. We're not there yet, but maybe in the
But,
next
but,
200
but
years.
the possibility of making a tiny one, just even the
What,
concept,
and yeah, and they
do we
have
even
them.
get there?
Yeah. We've been able to replicate
That's
a black hole about the size of 0.03 microns, which is so microscopic, right? Black hole that was only able to be sustained for about 15 minutes or so.
that's how they always start, and they grow up.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I completely agree. And we're also, in the United States, we're going to be building one over the next 6 to 7 years. And if I'm not mistaken, I might be stretching right now, but I'm pretty sure it stretches all the way from Ohio to Delaware in a circular formation. It's going to be the largest hadron collider in the entire world when it gets finished in about 8 years. That's, of course, if they don't upgrade the one at CERN to the size that they want to upgrade it to. But yeah, so I mean this this thought of this energetic force being able to be smashed together that essentially creates a black hole in itself. It'll be like this sociological breakthrough, right? Because from a not only from a mathematical standpoint, but it's like put the money where your mouth is, right? From a physical standpoint, we'll be able to create an assimilation of matter in which two locations are connected. Blow your mind. All of reality is an assimilation in itself. It's connected, because I mean, how could you say it's not? We physically have been able to prove it at that point in time. And so, got to get there as a species, of course. That's why I say 200 years. Even if the technology existed today, the sociological aspect of it is just, it's magic, right? Higher forms of technology is indistinguishable from magic, and typically people burn other people for having magic. I mean, at least that's how it's been for the last like 150, 200 years of historical context. And who knows if that was even magic? I mean, I don't know, but definitely
So
a
the
lot.
perception, so the perception of the simulation from outside, where we're in the simulation, wouldn't they also be? Would their dimension also be tangleable as well? What if theirs is, and they can perceive that?
Yeah, and so okay, so go from the so I believe that we're fourth dimensional beings perceiving the third dimension. And so take it from a fifth dimensional being aspect that's perceiving the fourth dimension. Yeah, not only would you be perceiving existence how we are perceiving existence, of course your observation would be from the outside of it, and so you would also be able to observe multiple outcomes of this particular observation, right? Depending on the situation, you would be able to theoretically exist at all of these moments at once, going forwards, backwards, right? I mean, it wouldn't assemble itself as forwards and backwards. You would just be existing in this representation of an assimilation that views itself as the third dimension. um, all of these still aspects still exist, right? The viewership, the observation of the third dimension exists. Of course, in this particular example we're using, you would be outside of this box, outside of this particular matrix from the observational standpoint. Yeah. And then, it even goes further up. I actually posted a video about this the other day. I can go grab it. Where did you get a chance to see it, we was talking. It actually goes all the way up to like a 10th dimensional aspect. He tries to break it down from a beta, alpha, ligma, and um, omega standpoint. And so, from these four different dimensional aspects of a viewership, the differences in relation to the way that matter in itself would be observed and the assimilations of
I
reality.
shared it to the top.
Yeah. Oh, you did? How do you like that? Wow, got it before even I was looking for it. You got it first. Yeah, and so that um, it's a really interesting concept. I think though that becomes more theoretical because even if we were able to create energy outputs that were, enough for me and you to physically walk through to say be somewhere like the moon or some sort of space station where we traveled hundreds of thousands of kilometers in say a matter of seconds because we were from one location to the next. Um, the the energy that's needed to sustain that, you know it's it's definitely a large energy output, and it's not something that our species is even close to being able to produce in some sort of sustainable factor today. And so that's, you know for sure comes into the play of why it's, probably like more of like a 200-year kind of thing. But the theoretical physics is there to pretty much say it's somewhat possible. Yeah. I mean, from a computational standpoint, we've already proven it possible. There, I have a video I posted. It's already three. Is that video? It's almost 3 years old. There was a small research team that used Google's quantum computer, which I may only add is only working off of, it was like was it 1,300 qubits, and out of logical qubits, I think it was like 30 logical qubits they're able to get out of that. And so very, very powerful system as far as the quantum processing system. If I'm not mistaken, I might be making that up right now. Was it 30 logical qubits? I got to double check that, but it's a decently powerful quantum system. And they used Einstein's ER equals EPR, the Einstein-Rosen's bridge, as the mathematical calculation to send a qubit worth of data from one wormhole to the next. And theoretically, it went through, right? It worked. And so, creating a future towards the study of the physical relation and trying to create this nature of such a gravitational force being able to exist in our reality.
How would you create those tears? Okay, let's just say we had the energy to make these tiny little micro tears and to sustain them.
Oh,
Would that not cause issues?
yeah. Have you ever seen a CAT scan before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the inside of a CAT scan?
Yeah.
So you could actually think of it very similar in relation to this. And so you create such a magnetic propulsion force, and of course you want to make a circular device, make a hole for yourself to be able to fit in, and whatever is going to be able to go through, and whatever capacitors and batteries and fusion technologies you would have built into, say, that singular ring that would be existing in front of you, could be connected to, of course, like a building of devices, as I assume it will be first, like, the first computers were giant things. um, yeah, you could, theoretically create such a gravitational force. It's what they're doing with the Large Hadron Collider, right? But this is, when I say, like, it takes so much energy. The Large Hadron Collider is as large as it is because they're supercharging this energetic force as it goes through the piping system, and it's hitting all these different arrays of mirrors and crystals, and trying to amplify the force of the laser, as well as doing other sensory tests and stuff like that as it runs through all these different chambers. But nonetheless, it's trying to increase that force, that output. Same kind of thought, but in something like a very, reasonable sized technology. That's why I think the sci-fi guys, man. I mean, a lot of people had this very, very interesting, concepts. Even what's that one, Stargate, right? Where you could even just have like something like a Stargate, or like devices where there's like four devices where you could just throw it up in the air and they assimilate around each other and start spinning in such a geometrical force way that it tears through reality in itself. I think there's a lot of different cool methods to it. Any other thoughts from anybody in the space, and anybody in the audience that would like to come up? I mean, please feel free to hit the request. I'll probably keep it going for another 5 minutes or so. If not, but any closing thoughts from Shellfish Dazzling the Quack?
The only closing thought I had was going back before to what you were saying with, everything eating everything. I was kind of thinking of it in more of kind of an energy term. It's more, my view of it is, energy consuming energy. If you want to think of it, just on, the scale of, the like species on the planet, right? As you were saying, one animal eats another one, and the bigger one comes along and eats that one, and the knock on effects. Um, but then, even out there, if there are kind of alien creatures and whatnot, it's just, yeah, again, the bigger one eating the smaller one, and so on, right? That chain effect. So, but I think in terms of all the energy that kind of floats around within the universe, it's just, and with black holes and the stars and everything, it's just energy consuming energy. So I thought that just for me was a nicer way. I was just kind of looking at it, but yeah, uh, it's it's very interesting, isn't it?
It's very interesting, and I think I actually remembered what he said to me the other day. I should say me, Google Fu in a conversation. He said everything in existence is either reproducing, eating something else, or waiting to be eaten. I thought that was really interesting. These three symmetries uh, that take that take fold in this what we call chaos through order. Of course, chaos being the universe and the very, very small, this subatomic realm of all of these energies that are bouncing around in each other, and then through entropy and structure, make up our very what we think of as um, not chaotic existence, although existence is definitely very chaotic, but uh, yeah, nonetheless on the scale that we perceive it to be at least.
I don't care how chaotic it is. I really just do like. I hope I do not get eaten by anything. Please, that'd just be horrible.
Well, no, I mean, eventually, okay, unless you are sustained in the identity of the third dimensional aspect in which that we perceive you to be yourself, right? Your body exists perpetually forever, uh, from a physical standpoint. You will eventually be eaten by something, whether it's burnt to ashes and spread across somewhere where it gets in the ocean and fishes get absorbed. It gets absorbed by fishes or coral or plankton or whatever it may be, or you're in the ground and the ground will eventually absorb you and turn you into mushrooms and dirt and all this other stuff. And it's a form of eating. It's a form of digesting. It's actually you could it leads to what he led to, right? Because he was basically trying to say it as we are part of the reproductive system of Mother Earth, right? Like if we're our significance is anything of indifference to why we are so significant on, say, the Earth, and if we evolved from this Earth, right? It would have been like we were some sort of part of the Earth's digestive tract, right? We were part of some sort of symmetrical makeup in which the Earth was in and itself had some sort of perpetual future, right, of itself. And so, it's interesting thought to think of. We are like the technology of the Earth in some sense, and it reproduced us, or another planet possibly reproduced us. Nonetheless, maybe stars stars produce some of us. But that being said, any last thoughts, Quack, Shellfish?
The only question I kind of had was a little off topic, and it actually had to do with your I don't even want to say disgust, but disdain, disinterest in OpenAI. Just because I know Wolfram is like one of your like I don't know, people that you look up to, inspiration, and I know he has some apps and has been a part of uh, I guess building it or interacting with their models. So I was just kind of curious, like what your thoughts were on his input into that system, and if it makes any difference on your feelings about OpenAI. I mean, I've kind of moved away from OpenAI, but I just kind of was like, oh, that's interesting because I think Kurzweil is over with either Google or Amazon helping with theirs. Anyway, yeah.
I have one.
Go ahead, McGrath.
What's your analysis on the soul? And that was more of a joke, but yeah, I want. Yeah, we can save that for another topic, another day.
Interesting one. Um, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that
I
might
don't
go
know.
too
I
long.
don't know if we would get another chance for you to bring up such a topic though at this thought. It's actually interesting you say it though because it was something that I touched on yesterday or the other day with someone actually, and it wasn't on a space or anything like that. It was my comment is that it doesn't exist, but at the same time, it exists for all of us, and so what do I mean? Okay. You think of yourself as an individual. You think of yourself as a singular unit of existence, right? And your soul is that of yours of existence. However, I do not believe to be such exactly. You are of at this moment 44 trillion cells, and on top of that, you are made up of atoms. These atoms are in multitude of these cells, and these atoms are always rearranging themselves and getting introduced to new actions of interactions through energy. And in knowing this, I mean, in knowing that you are in many, in just what you perceive to be your singular self, I think speaks to a larger notion that soul is all of us. I mean, the soul in relation to quantum or this metaphysical layer, or some people go to religious aspect of God, or and I don't want to get too religious, but it's just I think they're very relative, all in relation to each other. And when we're speaking about this kind of this symbolic notion of this underlying force that exists that could be perceived to be the controller of, say, existence in itself, right? The manipulator of in which actions have occurred, and through this complexity, all of these actions occur. Thence, therefore. Um, and I think you are that controller at the same time. And this is why some people sometimes question, why is my life the way it is? Well, you chose your life to be the way it is because the significance of you existing, at the very complexity of you existing, gives the ability for existence to be what it is at every moment that it will be there forth and forth. And so every single existence, every single action of existence being, theoretically just as equal in proportion to why it needed to be existing, sorry, at that very moment of how we perceive, of course, time in relation to space. And, that when I say soul, I guess uh, it's a yes and a no. When you say, do I have a soul? I would say, you have my soul, which is everyone else's soul as well. But that is just because we're all one and one is all. And 808, of course, you come up right when I'm about to close the spaceman, but I'd love to hear some thoughts from you.
I baited him with this.
Funny thing is, I wasn't gonna pop up, but McQuack actually, I like that last question because I like how you answered it, because it is something us as individuals build and grow over time through the experiences we go through. We carry on the dreams, the experiences, the mana what my ancestors call it, or uhane, which is the soul in our language. Um, your ancestors, your history, the people who became before you, the people who created you, through all of that experiences that they went through, and what you go through is a part of you, and everything is a part of it. Just like how the explanation of how things can be in the same place at one time, which they are, but at a deeper level than that is, like, say, your family member, is how you are able to be at places at the same time. Your ohana is what connects you to all these different things. And who are you? A part of your ohana is your ecosystem where you live in, which is everything around us, the earth, the stars, the wind that blows, all this energy, the things we grow, and it's so wild that how much of an effect our forces has on us. And without having that awareness and that strength to control and manage ourselves, to allow and block out the things that are not should not be allowed, is something as people, we as individuals, need to understand and nurture every day. And it's something that we become aware of through the different experiences and interactions we go through every day, like what we're going through this space, who we meet. Some talks we have in these spaces, many of us don't have that these kinds of talks in real life, which is something that also, when we have these talks here, leaks into our real life. Some people become aware of these things and starts to incorporate it in their own daily lives. Look what Shell does, without her being in these spaces, she probably wouldn't have gotten to where she at with using a lot of the technology, or probably would have, but would have been a different route. Who knows? We would never know, because she went through the route she went through, because she was where she was at the time she was there, which is so wild how we are able to take these different options we have. But it's if we are aware of those options ourselves. And that's why I always say, it's managing ourselves on so many levels, whether it's finance, whether it's ourselves, our understanding our subconscious mind, um, being able to accept reality, accept others' reality, and understand them. It's such a multifaceted thing, to where it's also amazing, because it always changes, through the interactions we go through. But yeah, love you
Uh,
guys, and aloha, everybody.
Aloha, brother, and you speak such volumes, man, in just a couple statements. So I really appreciate you coming up, 808. I'm gonna hop over to the Crypto Queen space, guys. I really appreciate everyone who came to this to space today. All the information you guys bring, it wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for you guys. And I agree with 808 there. I really loved that end question, McQuack. Oh, and Shellfish. I don't feel any differently about it. Wolfram is an entrepreneur, and he helped build the Chat GPT 2.5 before it was even the 3.0, which then, of course, came 4.0. And he built a large language, a natural language model to help make ChatGPT less stupid. And it helps in some cases, but it's of course specific use case. And it's he's an entrepreneur. He's a businessman first and foremost, and I always respect that about him. But nonetheless, I love everyone. I hope everyone has a great rest of the night, and we will see you guys soon. Night, everyone.